Welcome back to Blunt Business. We appreciate all of you for listening to the program. If you find it, as always, through, if it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, CannabisRadio.com, with the Cannabis Radio app. My next guest is a Nashville-based attorney that serves on the executive committee at Burr and Foreman and is a partner in their lending practice group with a focus on commercial lending and creditors' rights, representing financial institutions and borrowers in loan documentation, foreclosures, and loan and real estate transactions. I'm speaking with the managing partner at Burr and Foreman in Nashville, Tennessee, Tucker Herndon, here on Blunt Business. Thanks for being on with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, upon accepting the interview, it was because there is a recent story that was addressed to us that we really need to go ahead and make more attention and call to light to the cannabis industry more specifically. So the Federal Trade Commission and the Food and Drug Administration, FTC and FDA, they issued what is the second cease and desist letters to several companies marketing Delta-8 THC products and packaging that closely resembles popular children's snacks. Again, the second time in 2 years that these agencies have taken joint action on this issue. They're warning that these products may violate the Federal Trade Commission Act, and the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, as they can be easily mistaken for conventional foods by children. So these actions, Tucker, from the FTC and FDA, it's the second time they've called red flags out on this against companies selling Delta-8 THC products and child-friendly packaging. How does this reflect the broader regulatory landscape for cannabis products? Because, there is nothing said from the hemp bill or what's derived from the FDA hemp bill that gives any kind of framework. So it's been kind of left here, but yet the FTC and FDA can call these balls and strikes right now.
Sure. The overall hemp and cannabis space, and specifically the CBD world, it's really the Wild West out there because there is no oversight and rules and implementation relative to regulatory compliance other than what is in the Farm Bill. In specific states, you're starting to drill down and craft their own regulatory compliance requirements and registration process. But the FTC and the FDA's actions against these 6 companies that are failing to comply with what they are determining to be in compliance with marketing and advertising aspects are a direct issue that stems from the kid-friendly packaging that they are creating and using to entice for marketing. And there's a lot of argument of trying to make a determination that it's mistaken or misleading, and the snacks and candies are being presented in light of trying to be an advertising tactic to the younger audience. So from the underlying determination of how we address it and how the FDA tries to get people in compliance, it's going to have a direct impact on the CBD and cannabis space because it's going to cause more regulatory requirements on the state and federal level and can have significant impacts of the people that are following the rules and trying to stay in compliance and not directly marketing with snacks and candies that can be determined that are used for child candies.
Now, I want to individualize what's being said here as well, because among the 6 companies that were mentioned that were part of this warning, I can understand the validating the Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914, because that's about outlawing unfair methods of competition and unfair acts or practices that affect competition. I can understand if there's misleading advertising here and promotion and marketing. I can completely justify that. But then there's a part about the Cosmetics Act, it would violate the Cosmetics Act of 1920, which is that is a standard that I believe that the cannabis industry, or at least the hemp industry, the CBD industry, needs to be following. Just like I was saying, cannabis should be following ISO and good manufacturing practices. That should be the practices that all cannabis companies should strive for. I say it here on this program and on our grassroots marketing program. But, without any legislative framework in place, all we have had so far in terms of CBD products was we had, the Food Safety and Standardization Act that Congress tried to go and push into a bill, but all it was a bill that was presented but never got voted on. And until now, why would the FDA come in here and start saying that these products are violating that when there's not even a set compliance framework in place?
And I think the specific reason is from 2018 forward, there have been multiple interpretations of what can be allowed under the Farm Bill and how far people can push the allowance of CBD products. And Delta-8 is a perfect example of the FTC and the FDA are becoming more aware of advertising that is aimed specifically to children's candies and snacks that could effectively violate the overall safeguards and watchdog process of the FTC and the FDA that's aimed to protect consumers and specifically children's in this instance that could lead to unintended consumption of THC. So from an overall medical guidance, they are looking to make sure that there is not any interpretation or advertising that could be determined that they are targeting to children. And the backlash is that if people don't get in compliance with the underlying requests of these cease and desists, you're going to have amendments to the Farm Bill, like which have already been presented, that can specifically target the use of Delta-8, and it could provide a federal ban of hemp-derived intoxicating products, which is a extremely large, double-digit billion-dollar industry.
Okay, but now I just want to get Steve to help me try to interpret this for me. Because, okay, in the press release for the FTC, see, the principal deputy commissioner of the FDA, Namaje Bopus, BHD, they make the point about inadequate or confusing labeling can result children and unsuspecting adults of consuming products with strong resemblance to popular snacks and candies. Got it. That contain Delta-8 THC without realizing it, and accidental ingestion or overconsumption of Delta THC containing products could pose considerable health risk. Okay. But the FDA, once again, they might say they're working to safeguard the health and safety of U.S. consumers, monitoring, but they don't have any kind of framework in place. So monitoring and giving the rules by which these 6 companies can be, adhering to, that's a different thing here. The FDA, they're not giving a level playing field. Give us the rules and have these companies comply, right?
But I think that's the overall issue, is there are no written rules or requirements in connection with regulatory compliance from the CBD aspects. They're going to be, as we have legalization of marijuana and cannabis across the country, there will be more frameworks, and they're relying on state-specific regulatory requirements that are coming in and being interpreted and enforced and enacted on a case-by-case, state-specific basis. But right now, you're correct. There is no underlying requirement to comply. And as you mentioned, Principal Deputy Commissioner of the FDA comes out and talks about that, you're selling products illegally and you're demonstrating the complete neglect for consumer safety. But as a manufacturer, you're saying there are no requirements. So what am I in violation of? It's a great question.
And then over the summer, we've had the House Appropriations Committee talking about, putting a bill together when it comes to the hemp, the hemp bill coming up, the Farm Bill, that, they would try to go ahead and change the definition of the hemp seeds, a definition of hemp to include only components of the cannabis sativa plant and all derivatives. So the plan would be that any synthetically derived cannabinoids, hemp-derived, would be banned. So any Delta-8, Delta-9 overall nationwide will be banned. So let me just make this clear. Okay, so they want to go, the FDA is willing to go ahead and give warning flags about products that could be, if accidentally ingested, could be harmful. Okay, I understand that, but we don't have any framework from the FDA. They've been asking for public comment, and they also kept pushing this can down the road since 2018. So they've done nothing but, just pencil push this around, and they've offered no guidance whatsoever. And now the federal government can go ahead and say, well, you know what? Doesn't matter. We can just ban this altogether. We can put an amendment in right now into the 2025 agricultural FDA appropriation bill and say, well, doesn't even matter. You don't even get a chance to work on it anymore. Like, what's the better guideline? The thing is, it's 3 directions we're getting, but it's like, I think that the industry would probably be responsible and accountable and hold themselves accountable if they had a framework to work off of. So I feel like we're just getting circle jerked by the federal government.
Well, I think when everybody when the Farm Bill gained support, I don't think that everybody fully understood the effects of THC in a CBD product and how you can create CBD products that have strong psychoactive compounds like Delta-8 that can mimic the effects of medical and adult use cannabis. And, the overall industry is pushing to try to have as much of a potent effect in some type of smokable or gummy or liquid consumable. And because of that, there is significant market share, and you have every head shop, every gas station, every CBD store. You can even buy it online across nationwide. And it's the continuous pushing of the envelope that it is going to end up leading to overregulation or prevention of THC products.
So in the meantime, the public health concerns that are going to be put in place about related to Delta THC products, Delta-8, resembling children's snacks. I mean, where are the frameworks in place currently to address the concerns? And I can understand it. When the FTC and FDA, they show the products and what they look like, yeah, I can't really defend these companies. They really are trying to go as close as they can to showing themselves with the same branding as those other products. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, if they were just telling them, okay, change your product packaging and let's just move forward, if they could do that, then I think maybe things could kind of move along a little bit as well. But how about at least somebody saying, okay, then these are warnings. Are these companies going to be adhering to making changes? Because, I mean, they should at least by these warnings, especially if it's a second warning.
It's going to be interesting to see how each of these 6 companies responds in the 15-day requirement or deadline that the FTC and FDA gave them. Because the overall, if you look at each of these specific products that they're raising issues with, that's the overall thing that I just cannot wrap my head around. If it was not targeted into children's snacks and candies, would the FDA and the FTC even have an issue with it? Because this is consistently happened in other products that are packaged differently, and you have had no issues with the overall scope and determination of how this is being sold, except for the fact that you're starting to have children that are affected by these products because their parents or somebody that is their guardian or they come across this, and the children don't know any different. And you're having consistent issues with children consuming them having negative effects. And it goes to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, what the FDA and the FTC are trying to make the argument of, where we're looking out for the individuals and specifically the children. If you take the overall advertising and packaging and pull it out of the mistaken snacks and candies, does the FDA and the FTC have any overall leverage to make a determination of any other marketing aspects? And my answer would be no.
Right. Okay, so then within the state frameworks of who could be actually enforcing or regulating these companies, even though they might not have the direction of any kind of a hemp bill framework or what there is out there, what they can say is that, based on these warnings, these cease and desists, you could have, the cannabis control boards, if something like this were happening in cannabis in the legal or adult use or medical cannabis markets, they would have the cannabis control board come in and police it, or actually probably authorize law enforcement to go and police on this. But, can they, or can other, the departments that don't have a cannabis market, like Department of Health, can they jump in and apply more stringent compliance strategies to ensure products can comply with FTC and FDA regulations concerning packaging and marketing? Can state agencies do anything to intervene?
I think it's going to be a tough argument because there is no framework or overall, rules or regulations. I mean,
But if they're getting okay, but I'm just thinking an isolated incident, just in this letter right here, the cease and desist. Could that be enough to warrant another state agency to go and say, okay, we need to go ahead and follow up on this?
They could make a good faith determination and try to follow it based upon prior inability to comply or the underlying cease and desist. But what are the underlying ramifications? There are no levers for a health department to come cite you if you are in previous violation, because there's not any rules or regulations or overall guidance that you have, quote, broken.
From a legal standpoint, could they try to approach from saying, okay, can they go to a court or can they go to some legal counsel, and somebody comes in and say, okay, we're going to get a warrant, we're going to go and come in, get legal, go through the legal channels to be able to go ahead and say infiltrate, like if it is some of these stores that are, say, like, okay, in Florida, or they're online and they're, where the facilities are, that these facilities can be looked at. They can have some kind of, oversight where here's a legal warrant, here's our search, here's what's going on here, and then they can be fined.
I think the better way to approach this with the legal options would be to try to get a restraining order to prevent the manufacture or distribution of these specific products. I think getting a warrant and trying to go store by store and walking into a store and taking over the overall products or moving the products from the shelves, that's going to be a lot tougher. And from an overall manpower standpoint, that's going to be a real big pill.
I think if there was a further cease and desist, I think that would just require a recall, wouldn't it not?
Sure. Yes.
But I mean, until then, that's what I'm saying. So I understand the regulations don't allow anything for these state agencies to do anything about it. But if the cease and desist was there and they say, you know what, we don't want this going on in our state, let's do something about it. Let's go and approach the FTC, FDA, give us some guidance, give us some ability to go ahead and approach these companies and say, okay, listen, under authority of the FTC and FDA, you can't be selling these products. You have to repackage them or do something else.
I don't think that there's any specific requirement to package them. I mean, you look at the issue with the FDA and the FTC and the specific products. I think they're intellectual property issues with, misconception or misunderstanding or intentional marketing for a product that is not registered from the USPTO standpoint, and there might be some IP violations, but I don't think that there's any guidance that the FTC and the FDA can make a determination to say, hey, ABC company, and let's just pick one of them, the hippie mood is using Berry Boss chocolate balls, Cookie Cat Crunch, or Fruity Rocks, and saying, hey, company, you cannot market your product in that way. What are they going to be a violation of? Other than the broad aspect of making a determination that it is unintended consumption and we're here to protect the consumers. And as such, we believe that it is misleading and mocking of similar kid-friendly snacks.
Well, the other thing too that can be done, and this is where, we'll leave the argument to this, is that, with these rulings by the FTC and FDA, I mean, we're looking at the products that they're showing. Okay, there's one that looks like Chips Ahoy, one that's like Oreo. Nabisco should be absolutely on top of this and say, okay, there needs to be a lawsuit put on these folks and say, listen, you can't be doing this. Or, they need to go and jump in and say, hey, the FTC and FDA already told you a second time, you need to stop doing that. You're hindering on our business because we don't put those kind of products out. And the same thing with, it's actually, they're all Nabisco product. Well, they're Jolly Ranchers is Hershey, excuse me. So the three products they referenced in the press release from the FTC, right across the board, it's like, okay, these are products we can see on the stores, and these companies also need to go and raise awareness of the fact that, hey, we're aware of this going on, and we don't condone this. So that's got to be mentioned as well.
I agree, and I'm surprised that there has not been overall some type of cease and desist from an intellectual property standpoint, because you've seen all the images. You look at it, there's Doritos, there's Lifesavers, there's Skittles, there's Oreos, there's all of this product and these packaging that you can put a bag of Doritos right beside the CBD infused Dorito package, and they look very, very, very similar.
I mean, I'm just being logical here. I'm just some schmuck host that's doing a cannabis radio program here. And I'm going to have an audience here, but you know what? I think these big corporations could go and benefit from the fact that, hey, listen, We're paying attention to what's going on here. Okay. We don't condone this either. Like, I mean, hey, these companies, go do your business. Go do what you want. You want to kind of like deviate and get as close as you can without getting caught? Fine. But you're getting us in trouble as an industry. And that's where I want to go and focus on next, Tucker, is because it's these kind of actions right here where the FTC and FDA right now, they feel like it's not just the first time, it's a second time. And I don't want intervention to go ahead and start spreading into the cannabis space. And that's something I fear about this industry. And I think we need to address that coming up after the break. So I want to ask that about you about that, among other things. But again, this is a great conversation to have. I love the fact that, we're coming across here. We're just saying, listen, this is where the federal government needs to come in and offer a framework in place when it comes to all these CBD-related products. Delta-8, Delta-9. Look, I mean, and that's the fact that, some states have already banned certain products, but, okay, are they going to ban it? Or, if there's benefit for these products, which we know there are some people that feel, and we know companies that are very adherent, they do the right third-party testing, they do the certification. There are a lot of great companies that do not need to be taken down at the behest of these companies that are getting violated right now, that are getting called out to the floor for violating potentially the Cosmetics Act of 1920 and the Federal Trade Act of for the 1910s, whatever it was. Those kind of things that needs to be considered, and that should be called out to the floor. 1914, that's what it was. So I'm going to come back with more questions here with Tucker Herndon, managing partner at Burr and Foreman, here on Blunt Business, back after a short break.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
Welcome back to Blunt Business. I'm here with managing director at Burr and Foreman, Tucker Herndon. By the way, it got quite a few offices located to go and find where they are. And by the way, you can go ahead and look up their website, burr.com, burr.com, and you can find everything about them as we go on with this interview. So before the break, Tucker, I love that we came into this direction. Like I said, I think just between us, we can have so much figured out and resolved here to get this issue put to bed. But if it doesn't get put to bed by now, we have to be concerned about what I think is what could be a more direct industry impact, where regulatory actions by the FTC and FDA could affect the broader cannabis industry. That's maybe I'm being, a little bit cynical, black pilling. Maybe I'm getting a little bit nervous and anxious for no reason, but I can't help it. But what is the chance that the FTC and FDA could supersede state regulations in terms of compliance costs, operational practices, and if they could implement future regulations in response to these actions, if that could also be affected, are there any regulatory enforcement mechanisms already at their disposal now that they can apply to states? And have they ever been applied?
I mean, I think that we talked previously on the interview a few minutes ago, talked about just the overall blatant disregard for the request by the FDA and the FTC, because these letters have been issued multiple times to multiple organizations, and their inability to try to address the unintended consumption of THC could significantly affect the overall rules and regulations that are put in place for both CBD and cannabis. And if I was in the cannabis-specific space, and I was in a state that had legalized cannabis for recreational and or medical, I would really hope that the CBD manufacturers would get in compliance with the request for the FDA and the FTC, because if not, you'll have additional government intervention and higher scrutiny on the overall CBD and THC industry, which is going to cause significant requirements for compliance and or oversight that is unnecessary at this time.
You can also imagine, I don't want to I say apolitical on this content I always do, but the one thing is that, we can always see that where sometimes these three-letter agencies, they might overstep bounds. They could very well try to overstep bounds and say, you know what, we're not going to worry about what state regulations there are, that there's just going to be certain things that can be done that we will supersede, and we can just go ahead and make changes too. Or we can go ahead and, create a framework ourselves in terms of enforcement. That could come into play too. Or we could just jump right into cannabis and just lump cannabis and hemp together. We know this, and going back to 2016, I remember we had that real boom of all these CBD companies coming by the wayside, okay? I know there's a lot of companies I probably interviewed on grassroots marketing that I don't even know if they're in existence anymore. But because there were so many CBD companies that are out there, competition, of course, the marketplace will determine which ones will survive and thrive, which ones will go away and dissipate. And that's what happens here. So like the market helps to control itself. But I think more importantly than ever, and I say this over and over, it's about compliance. And what the FDA and FTC, to their credit, they've had long-standing guidelines that they are offering to us. The Cosmetics Act of 1920, in terms of CBD products, Delta-8, Delta-9, to have that level of compliance, and to also the FTC regulations. I mean, what they cited as possible violations are correct. Let's just make that clear. I'm not disputing the fact that, what they are calling out on the cease and desist letters, they have just cause to say that, correct? I mean, if you had to go and defend the FTC and FDA, these cease and desist letters, if they were asking for removal of these products or a recall, I mean, if you had this case in front of a court, I think you'd probably be able to go and help in favor of the FTC, FDA, correct?
I agree. Yes. It's broad and vague enough, even though it's 100 plus years old. It is the framework that was put in place for unfair and deceptive practices in the marketplace. There is a good faith argument that that is what the FDA and the FTC are trying to achieve under these second round cease and desist letters.
But it's also now, I want to pivot into what the industry can do itself. So for the industry itself, they already have given us parameters. I mean, look, every state control board can give us compliance issues, how I have to follow things in terms of, whatever the supply chain, the software, whatever kind of issues they have in terms of what they have to go and do to keep everything from seed to sale compliant, the growth process. We're more than aware of good manufacturing practices. We're more than aware of the Cosmetics Act. And obviously those are much higher barriers of compliance. But if every company would follow those higher barriers to compliance, put the money in and the resources into this, and do so, we would avoid issues like this. I think we would absolutely go and deal with that. So, I mean, do you feel like if you did have companies that you're working with right now that you consult with, is it worth the reward instead of taking the risk and not following those levels right now?
I think that packaging that resembles children's snacks is what is gaining most attention by the government agencies. And if those companies did not run afoul and cause confusion, specifically confusion with children's snacks and candies, the FDA and the FTC would not be as stringent on issuing cease and desist letters.
Well, where my case is like, I'm trying to say compliance should be to a certain level but the FDA only came in and joined the FTC in this cease and desist because of the harmful risks, because of the misleading packaging and marketing. So the FDA probably not so much into that. Like, as you said, if it's just the marketing, this packaging issue, this gets resolved, then yeah, they're not even paying attention this much.
I agree.
So if you were just talking about the bare minimum, if we're talking just about the bare minimum that should be done right now, yeah, change the packaging. You want to go and keep putting those products out, just don't call it something that looks like Chips Ahoy or Jolly Ranchers or Doritos. Just don't do it. If your products are good, they're going to sell. You don't need to go and go that extra route and try to go ahead and mimic somebody else. I mean, and how far do you need to go and do that? I mean, is it the words on the packaging, the way the packages are structured? I mean, the design of the fonts. I mean, how far do they need to go and make sure that they should go ahead and stay away from anything that resembles any conventional children's snacks?
Well, I think you've got two different issues that are running parallel to each other. You've got the overall accidental ingestion and overconsumption of any THC product, because typically what somebody does is they will consume it either in an edible or snack, gummy, however it might be. And the immediate reaction is, I didn't take enough, I've got to take more. And then you've got this overall issue with the misleading, confusing overall packaging aspect that resembles familiar children's snacks. So it's like education of the general public and removal of the marketing that resembles snacks and candies can go a long way. if you as an industry decide to educate the general public of consumable THC products and explanation of the prevention of accidental ingestion and overconsumption, that will go a long way with the government regulators, along with removing the marketing attempts to younger age individuals. And I think by achieving both of those overall goals will prevent overregulation or blending THC, CBD, and cannabis products from the regulatory aspect.
So if the worst case scenario were to happen, there could be future legal changes that could come to the end to at least the hemp industry and these particular companies or others that do the same kind of practice. Let's say other companies decide to go into the same kind of thing, and the FDA and FTC put out the cease and desist maybe a third time. Okay, here's your third strike. If you don't comply now, what could they possibly do? What are the consequences for not complying to the cease and desist?
I think there ends up being some type of restraining order that prevents the manufacturing of specific products, and it'll be done by a federal court judge or a state court judge, and the implementation of that specific ruling across the country is going to take time, and the determination of if other judges are going to buy in that specific analysis or record or determination.
And this is a determined amount of time on that restraining order, so those products could probably go and become perishable by that point.
That is correct.
Yeah. It's the risk they take. But, I wish that these companies would, I get it. Look, you're trying to go and slide, you want to get your products out there, and, these kind of practices, it's not surprising that these kind of things happen. I'm not trying to go ahead and, pour water on everybody out there and trying to make an extra buck, okay? That's fine. But, if you're getting these kind of letters, you're doing something wrong. Let's just say that, be clear. And, make changes to it, okay? It's like, anything else. You make a mistake, that's okay. Correct it. And you can still rectify that situation. Your products don't have to go and be thrown by the wayside. Just repackage them. It's a cost you're going to take because you did this in the first place. That's the whole point of this, okay? So, what decision are you going to make? We're going to go back to commercial break. When we come back, I want to ask about, the legal advice that companies should really get about this from the hemp and cannabis industries. So I'm going to ask that here once again with Tucker Herndon, managing partner at Burr and Foreman. Website, if you want to check out them and learn more about their possible representation for you, is burr.com, and you can learn more there. And back with final questions after this.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
I'm back with final questions with Tucker Herndon, managing partner at Burr and Foreman, based in Nashville, Tennessee. And we've been talking about the issues where the FTC and FDA had sent a second set of cease and desist letters to companies selling products containing Delta-8 THC and packaging designed to look like children's snacks. So now we've gone through this whole issue and we've addressed it. And we've talked about the consequences. We've talked about, the possible call to action to the industry for the cannabis industry specifically, to be aware of what's going on here if they need to go ahead and say something to their fellow hemp industry comrades. Hey, stop this. We don't need the FTC and FDA on our backs. And for other CBD companies, the same thing. We want to be able to go and, work without having those agencies coming in and intervening on us. Like, you're making it harder on everybody else. So, Tucker, I want to ask about if you had to give legal advice for any of these companies that are selling Delta-8 THC products to avoid running afoul of FTC and FDA regulations, what should they be doing in terms of avoiding this, to take care of their own outfits? Say they're the ones that didn't get cease and desist, but this is like a wake-up call to them. And then what would you say if it was anything different to the cannabis companies?
I would say work with your local government, state government authorities in connection with regulatory compliance of the CBD space, along with educating the general public of overconsumption, but also just steer clear of the unintended consumption and marketing efforts that can be determined to be marketed to children or misleading to the general consumer.
And if you don't want the FTC and FDA to go ahead and get on your back, like I said, these companies are well aware You can go ahead and look up the Cosmetics Act of 1920. You can look up the Federal Trade Act of 1914. You can look the Federal Trade Act. You can look at these laws right now, and you could have someone like yourself, interpret the framework of what those laws mean and how it is applying to your business, and then you say, okay, so we're going to make sure we comply with these acts, because if we do, these are laws that have been around for 100 years that, we're never going to get a cease and desist letter from. If we follow these rules, we actually have something in place that could work. And as you said, these could be easily for the FTC and FDA, if they're looking to go and use these barriers that have been around for years, they could go to these companies in court and, possibly successfully prosecute them for, the bad practices they're being called out for right now. So if you just follow along those rules, you should be okay, right?
I believe so. And it's best put by Director Levine of the FTC. He stated that companies that market and sell edible THC products that are easily mistaken for snacks and candies are not only acting illegally, but they are also putting the health of young children at risk. And he said those that prioritize profits in front of children's safety are at serious risk of legal action. And that's coming from one of the FTC directors, Levine. And if he's specifically stating that is the message that says, hey, we have issue with mistaking snacks and candies and putting profits in front of children's safety.
No disagreement here. My only issue that I'm bringing up that's specific to this program, Blunt Business, is that it's a second time. I mean, how far are you going to play your bluff? Like you're a poker player thinking, oh, the FTC, they're not going to do a thing about this. They're not going to hurt us. We're going to be able to sell our products. We'll sell our products before we even have any problems. Well, we don't want to have to worry about that, because we don't want you playing that gamble when it's going to be dependent upon the hemp industry, other companies like yours that are not going to play those kind of games, or the cannabis industry could also get some kind of backlashing from this as well. Not good, not cool. We don't want that.
So I agree. I mean, you could have significant backlash on the CBD and cannabis industry for something that is easily achieved by just changing your marketing tactics.
There we go. Perfectly said. I like the way you wrapped it up. Tucker, thank you so much for being on with us again. Tucker Herndon, managing partner at Burr and Foreman. And real quickly, once again, the website, burr.com, burr.com. And for those that want to go ahead and learn more about what you're doing, I mean, there's a lot of different offices for Burr and Foreman. You do a lot more than just, anywhere in terms of agriculture, funding and lending, and also anything related to cannabis. Talk about what you offer in terms of services that maybe some of our listeners could definitely benefit from.
Sure. Regulatory compliance throughout all of the Southeast. We deal with the hemp and cannabis industry along with alcoholic beverage regulatory compliance. We can help in all aspects of real estate, leasing, employment, manufacturing, and we're a full-service firm ready to help in any way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on with us. Really appreciate it, Tucker. I'm glad we got a chance to have this conversation. I think this call to action is very important, and I hope a lot of listeners really take something from this. And, hey, we're just trying to help along. We want to really help and make a big difference. So thank you again, Tucker. Thanks for listening. Thanks for just being part of this and helping to be part of this conversation. Really great conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, listeners, as well, for listening in. I hope you got a lot of takeaways from this. We'll talk to you next time.